This morning our gospel comes from 1 John chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. See what love the Father has given us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Beloved, we are God's children now. What we will be has not yet been revealed. What we do know is this: when he is revealed, we will be like him, for we will see him as he is. And all who have this hope in him purify themselves, just as he is pure. Everyone who commits sin is guilty of lawlessness. Sin is lawlessness. You know that he was revealed to take away sins, and in him there is no sin. No one who abides in him sins. No one who sins has either seen him or known him. Little children, let no one deceive you. Everyone who does what is right is righteousness, just as he is righteous. The gospel of the Lord. You may be seated. Well, good morning to all of you, and welcome, and a special welcome to those listening on the radio and joining us by internet broadcast. At the risk of dating myself, I want to invite you back to a happy time in my life, at least I remember it as happy, when I would watch a weekly favorite show, Hee Haw. A segment of the show involved barber Archie Campbell and Roy Clark in a that's good, that's bad debate. So here's how it went. Roy Clark and Archie Campbell do an exchange in the barber shop where Archie the barber begins a story of how he inherited a bunch of money, and Roy comments how that's good. No, Archie says, the IRS took half of it. That's bad, says Roy. No, that's good, responds Archie. I had enough left to do something I've always wanted to do. I bought a plane and took flying lessons. Roy responds, well, that's good. No, says Archie, that's bad. How come, asks Roy. Well, I was practicing my stunts, and when I turned the plane upside down, I fell out of it. Well, mercy, that's bad, said Roy. No, that's good, explains Archie. Well, how can that be good, asked Roy. Turns out, as I fell, I was headed right for a haystack, says Archie. Well, thank goodness, exclaims Roy. That was good luck. Oh no, replies Archie, that's bad. How come that's bad, wonders Roy out loud. Archie explains, well, as I neared the haystack, I noticed a pitchfork sticking straight up at me. That's real bad, offers Roy. No, says Archie, that's good. Roy asks, well, how come that's good, Archie? Well, I missed the pitchfork, says Archie. Well, certainly that's good, offers Roy. Archie disagrees and says, no, that's bad. How can not falling on a pitchfork be bad, asks Roy. And Archie replies, because I missed the haystack too. And for those of you younger, Hee Haw is on by rerun now, so I encourage you to watch it. This humorous exchange is an exaggeration of how we sometimes see things differently than they are. We are quick to point out our interpretation of someone's actions or situation while lacking a total understanding of the way things really are. At best, we quietly wonder if what we see is the real deal, and more often than not, we quickly form inaccurate opinions and prejudices based on our own perceptions. Other times we see things that beg for empathy and Christian kindness, yet we don't acknowledge it. When my dad was stricken with lung cancer for the second time, his well-meaning nurse daughter was concerned about his mental health and suspected depression. I left a message with his doctor that I would like this addressed at his next appointment. And so during his appointment, the kind doctor asked my dad if he saw the glass half full or half empty. My dad was not getting what was being asked of him, so he asked the doctor what he meant. The doctor rephrased his question. If you see a half a glass of water, is it half full or half empty? Well, my dad is getting annoyed, and he said, what's the matter with you? I see a half a glass of water. So the doctor persisted and said, how's your mood? My dad, now using words that I won't repeat here, replied, I'm dying of cancer. How do you think my mood is? My dad's perceived depression was a natural response to a terminal illness, and yet I wanted a mental health diagnosis and a prescription to make it all better. I did not want him to feel the pain. That was a natural stage of the grieving process. In other words, when his actions and words were appropriate for his reality, it made me uncomfortable, and I wanted to make it something else that was more comfortable for me. In today's reading in 1 John, as Christian believers, we are to match our words and our actions. If we love God, we are to extend this love to one another. By disliking others or treating them unkindly, we are following our natural tendencies to be self-centered and concerned solely with our own desires, needs, and interests. But if we open our hearts and minds to Christ, we are empowered to love and treat others kindly. In other words, we walk the talk. I'd like to go on further with some of my own recent experiences as examples of how our own perceptions are false accountings of something quite different than reality. And by examining these real-life happenings, we can come up with perhaps a more peaceful understanding of our current condition that is uplifting and closer to the Christ-centered life we are called to. A short while ago, I was sitting in a busy clinic waiting room, one where chairs were in double rows back to back. And it kind of reminded me of an anthill. People were busily going back and forth, calling patients in, patients leaving, people as young as 3 months old up to ages in wheelchairs with casts and splints on. Now, I would never eavesdrop, mind you, but the magazines were old and not very interesting, and there was no TV close by, so what's a girl to do? 2 men were having a conversation. It seems one was a father of teenaged or young adult children, and the other was older. The older gentleman said, "Kids don't want to work anymore. They want everything handed to them." The other agreed, and they went on to describe in great detail each's work history and long hours spent doing manual labor. I thought about this as it wasn't the first time I've heard this type of comment. Is it really that kids don't want to work, or is it the nature of work that has changed? Who defined what type of activity is deemed work? You have heard the saying, or maybe it's I that use it all the time, "I love work. I could sit and watch it for hours." Webster's online dictionary defines work as sustained physical or mental effort to overcome obstacles and achieve an objective or result. My thoughts turn to some of the kids or young adults I know. Even though I am so proud of my very own, they despise it when I talk about them publicly, so I will use others as examples. A grandson of my dear friend is off at military training where he is studying and learning skills to work with missiles. He is hardly a slacker. A good share of our high school seniors are working in co-op positions at various Hillsboro businesses. Is this required? No. Is it valuable training? Yes, absolutely. Is this work? Of course it is. But when I was their age, yes, I drove a farm truck and tended to a 10-acre garden, or at least it seemed like 10 acres, did laundry using a Wringer washing machine. My girlfriend was so astonished and felt so bad for me that I had to use that thing. And I baked and I cleaned house. A tiny bit more physical, but I'm not sure many of the tasks I did achieved high-end results. This is why I stopped cleaning years ago. I see our young people wanting to achieve a result, not simply work in a way that it has always been done. It has to be of value to them and have a purpose. This leads me to another fact about young people and their desire to work. Often we hear that on the average, a young adult will change his or her career 7 times before retiring. This is often interpreted as they're not willing to settle down and establish themselves in the community. Again, the definition and nature of work has changed. In the office where I work, one particular position had a high frequency of turnover. I would hire excellent candidates. They all had a 4-year college degree. Some even had master's degrees. They were ambitious, technology-driven, and often smarter than me. Though frustrating for me, as the hiring and training process is expensive and time-consuming, it was at the same time very interesting. They clearly were not there looking for long-term employment. They were building skills, networking, and gaining valuable work experience to apply to their resume. And so what we think we are seeing is that there is less desire to do work. But in actuality, the nature of work has changed, and we are hesitant to adapt to this change. We tend to define work as hard labor or by how much wealth is achieved through work. Proverbs 14 says, "The poor are disliked even by their neighbors, but the rich have many friends." But what is wealth? Often those who are materially rich may get plenty of attention and respect, while those who have less may be ignored or even disliked. There are many people who work extremely hard physically and have little to show for it. On the other hand, many sit idle all day and yet appear on the list of the wealthiest. And while we're on the topic of young people, our first observation is that they can't function without being plugged into some gadget with earphones. No one wants to talk anymore. They won't know how to socialize. They have lost the sense of community. While I will say it is true, people as young as 3 years old are better at operating electronic devices than I am. But let me assure you, they are not shutting down socially. At a basketball game this winter, the players on the opposing team were behaving badly, so we refs in the bleachers thought, and some of us recalled in our day we settled those physical and verbal exchanges that happened on the court later out in the parking lot after the game. So for days, we parents talked about the horrible behavior of these players and how our poor innocent little boys did not deserve such treatment. Well, our little boys are juniors and seniors in high school, by the way. A big lesson was learned by us adults when we attend a regional tournament only to see the very same players who treated our poor little boys so badly sitting alongside with our boys and having the best time. Turns out they've known each other for years, playing against each other in various sports programs. So contrary to what we think we know about community, and I wouldn't trade ours for anything in the world, the definition of community has expanded. We are no longer confined by the physical boundaries of a city, of a township, or a county. Our community is the world. Social media and transportation has allowed us to quickly learn of the wonderful work and dangers our missionaries are engaged in across the world. It has allowed remote access to medical specialists and large medical centers to diagnose and treat mysterious and life-threatening conditions. We can take online classes from universities without leaving our home. Through our radio and internet broadcasts, we have been able to share the wonderful talents of our pastors and musicians around the world. So our perception that communication is a lost art, we must rethink. How we communicate is changing. I still love getting a handwritten letter, and in spite of having a cell phone, my mother says she can never reach me. But no longer are we restricted to traditional means of communication, but rather communication is instant and widespread. In Colossians 4, Paul writes, "Conduct yourselves widely toward outsiders, making the most of the time. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer everyone." So through social media, God has opened a door for us to share with others what God has done for the world through Jesus Christ. Just yesterday, I saw a sign that read, "Prayer is the strongest form of wireless communication." A strong misrepresentation in my world that I feel I must burden you with is dealing with the nature of medical care and the current delivery system to obtain that care. We are quick to say that our medical system is a disaster. Despite being the priciest in the world, it produces some alarming results. We live shorter lives than people in other rich nations, and infants in the United States die from various causes at far higher rates. If this isn't bad enough, among other wealthy nations studied, we have the second highest rate of death by coronary heart disease and the second highest rate of death by lung disease. We have the highest rate of women dying due to complications of pregnancy and childbirth. In this particular study, America ranked 17th among other developed nations in the status of our health. So we blame the insurance industry or the conglomerate healthcare systems for our plight, or the greed of doctors or the United States president. But if we really look at the health of Americans, we cannot ignore Americans consume the most calories per capita, we abuse more prescription and illicit drugs, are less likely to fasten our seatbelts, have more traffic accidents involving alcohol. Our political climate does not support programs that support what we already know. Prevention saves lives and dollars. Yet we remain a treatment-oriented healthcare system, spending billions on chronic and terminal diseases that can be prevented by good lifestyle decisions and early screening. A sign hanging in our office reads, "Don't worry about your health, it will go away." So it's really not the healthcare industry that is a mess. It's more likely a sign of our own poor self-care while expecting a magic pill to fix it and do it for less cost. So let us take pause when we observe, hear, or feel an assumption where we might lack part of the story. Let us worry about calling the glass half full or half empty, and more about the true value of water. It quenches our thirst, it provides refreshment, and through baptism provides unity with each other in Jesus Christ. Amen.